Hey Max, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
I can't hear him either.
Okay. Max, can you hear us? Doesn't look like he's. Yeah, I guess his audio is out. Um,
I'm also not hearing anything.
Hey Max, I don't think your audio is working. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we're back. Sorry about that. Let me see if we can get back to this. Bit of a delay there. All right. Are we back onto the presentation as well?
Yep. You can see it and hear you too.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know where I might have lost you. I think I was talking about my background a little bit about that, but real summary is right there on the presentation. So sorry we lost you and everything on that whole process. But as I was saying, yeah, I own three properties, three in Colorado. One's a short-term rental in Wheat Ridge, one is a long-term rental, and then a primary in Lakewood as well. So let me just jump into the presentation. Makes it a little bit easier. So yeah, kind of the main topics today is the fixer-upper Airbnbs and turnkey Airbnbs. And it's going to be a little bit more detailed on the fixer-uppers just because there's a lot more going into that process compared to a turnkey. But kind of the definition here of a fixer-upper is really one that requires the repairs, renovations, or updates, offering you some more potential on the increased value through these improvements that you put in. And then a turnkey is one that's completely updated. Usually it's a flip home or a new build. There's not really many changes that are needing to be done. All you really have to do is put in the design and furnish the property, and you can get up and list it. So going into fixer-upper costs. So these are kind of the key factors that you're looking into when you're purchasing a home, especially a fixer-upper. So with that said, you have minor remodels, major remodels, and complete remodels. They kind of vary with fixer-uppers. You really have kind of a wide range of what you're looking at. You have some homes that, might have an updated kitchen, but some of the bathrooms and bedrooms might need to be updated. So with those minor remodels, that's looking like, countertops, backsplash, appliances, small things like that. You can range from around $10,000 to $20,000. And that's, saying, you're updating a bathroom or maybe one of the bedrooms or adding a few changes to the kitchen. That's where those prices really range. A major remodel, this is including pretty much a full new kitchen remodel, changing all the floors, maybe updating a lot of the electrical systems, paint, things like that are really going to start increasing your pricing. Those can go up to about $20,000 to $65,000. And then next is a complete remodel. This is pretty much ripping down to studs, opening up the whole home, changing walls, knocking walls down, completely overhauling the kitchen, redoing the bathrooms, possibly major changes such as like a roof or building a garage. These are all things that are, pretty extensive in the way of costs and time. So you're looking between, $65,000 to $130,000 or more. And, those numbers do seem high and pretty intense. There are certain ways of possibly bringing down those prices of, DIY or, contracting out, maybe you being the subcontractor and finding the right, different specialists that are able to do a lot of these things. But usually these prices, you're hiring a contractor to sub out and do everything themselves. And that's where the prices really can kick up. Moving on to some fixer-upper costs as well. These are kind of a breakdown of each area. The bathroom kind of falls in line with, as well as a kitchen remodel. They can range from about $6,000 to $15,000 depending on the scope of work. With basic cosmetic remodels, $3,000 to $12,000, you're not changing the overall footprint of that bathroom or kitchen. You're kind of just replacing the cabinetry, maybe changing the flooring, some tile and stuff like that. And that's where those costs can be a little bit cheaper. A mid-range remodel, 10 to 35,000. As this bathroom example, you're maybe expanding the bathroom, changing the overall footprint, and maybe changing some of the plumbing that's going into that. And that's where those prices could increase. If you want to move the shower or toilets into different areas, that requires you moving plumbing and making sure that it's set up correctly and changed to the location of it. And these high-end remodels, $30,000 or more, that's where you're really knocking down walls, expanding that bathroom or kitchen, and really getting the footprint much larger. And, that's going to be a lot more intense in the overall process. You are doing a lot more work and putting into this thing. So, when you're moving and expanding walls, you're changing the overall footprint of that home. And then again, some custom extensive renovations, that ties right in with that high-end remodel where you're kind of opening up the space and taking up more square footage of the rooms that you're doing. And that's where those prices really go up. A small caveat with two, in overall renovations is removing walls. A lot of people think, you walk into a home, you can just knock down walls. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And this is a good range of what these prices you're looking at that could vary on, knocking walls down. Usually it can range from $300 to $1,000 for non-load bearing walls. And non-load bearing walls are usually the ones, maybe they're only halfway through the actual room that you're in. They're not sitting right in the middle of the home. A lot of ranch style homes that are here in Colorado are a good example that you could see load bearing walls and kind of know which ones aren't and are. Usually it's the wall sitting right in the middle of the house. That's usually a load bearing wall holding up that roof. And then for those load bearing walls, you're looking at that 12,000 to 10,000 cost. This all requires a structural engineer that I'd recommend you bringing into the property just to make sure the wall is load bearing or not load bearing, as well as knowing kind of the engineering of the house to make sure that it could be knocked down without any concerns of structural issues. And just for information, engineer costs range from about $300 to $1,500. And that's for them going in, doing kind of a whole survey, making sure the home's structurally sound and where those walls are and which ones are going to be load bearing. There's a lot of tricks, if you are looking into kind of the DIY side of finding out which walls are load bearing. One kind of good example is if you are able to get into those attics and check out the trusses that are going across. And looking at the wall, if the wall is actually parallel with the trusses in the attic space, most likely if they're running right there parallel with them, it's most likely not a load-bearing wall. Ones that are running horizontal with the struts in the attic, most likely are going to be a load-bearing wall or doing some kind of support because they're actually hanging against those trusses that are up in the attic. Moving on to kind of the benefits and negatives of fixer-uppers. So let's start with the benefits. The greatest thing with fixer-uppers is, to start, is able to create your own personalization. If you're able to go into a home that, is dated and not set up to the way you want, you're able to go in there and change it to the way that you want it. You're able to personalize it, design it, set it up, give it that open floor plan that you might want, especially for Airbnb, which is one of the top things that are seen and looked for in Airbnb properties, is being able to have that kind of open floor plan where it's not kind of divided up. People can sit and hang out in areas together rather than being all closed off into a living room and then moving to the kitchen. These are all spaces that you can open up with knocking down walls and giving it that real open and kind of updated feel. And being able to get a fixer-upper, you can do that and design it the way you want. Being able to remove the old design and create a new one, that kind of goes hand in hand with what I just said. It's able to create the design that you want in the home that you're trying to build out. If you're going with a new build or something that's already updated, there's really no point in going in and trying to just knock down walls in a house that's already updated because you're kind of losing the money that you just purchased. And again, creating that open floor plan. That open floor plan, like I said, with Airbnb is probably the most sought after thing that people want with a property, especially as they're renting it. They want to be able to hang out, be in groups and stay with each other rather than being kind of divided up. And then of course, the resale value. Resale value is a big part with buying a fixer upper. One, you can actually get that home for a better deal. You're able to, save some money on that property because you're going to be fixing it up. And when you update it, you're able to sell it for the premium that it was updated to. A big thing is ARV, which is after renovation value. It's a good way to kind of do a quick equation and figure out what you could possibly get with it by checking comps. And if you find a property that's, needing those updates and seeing some comparables of areas that are updated homes right next to it, you can see what you can actually project and get those benefits. A good example is my home that I redid over by the city park area. I bought it for about $400,000 and now I can probably sell it for around seven. I put in about $120,000 into it. But now I'm renting it, so it's doing pretty well. But it's a great example of doing these updates and changing the home to be an updated home in the neighborhood. And it's able to return a pretty good benefit. Digging into some of the negatives, obviously time to launch. With a fixer upper, you are putting that time and effort into the home and you are losing that income of being able to rent it immediately. As an Airbnb and you're purchasing a home as an investment, your goal is to get it up and running and getting that return on investment. So when you're doing updates to the property, you're looking at a lot of time, just cabinets alone are looking around, 4 to 6 weeks just to develop and get in, but you still have to have the plans and measurements built out. So from closing to actually finishing your property, depending on how many updates you plan on doing, you could be looking at, 3 to 6 months in time before you're actually launching your property as an Airbnb. Next is costs. You're looking at a lot more costs going into it. With our pro formas and things like that, a lot of the build outs, you're looking at homes that might be turnkey. So all you're really factoring in is those design elements as well as furnishing of the home. With a fixer upper, you're factoring in a lot more costs. You're like those ones that I kind of went over. If you are doing a bathroom update or a kitchen update, these are all things that, you're going to have to factor into your upfront costs of designing the home to make sure that you're going to kind of have that extra cash to develop that. And, a lot of different things come up, kind of tying into the next thing, which is unforeseen challenges. You have a lot of challenges. You knock down a wall, you start to see some, old pipes, some old plumbing, electrical. These are all things that you won't really know until you're knocking down walls on what might need to be updated and changed. So these are a lot of challenges that you might be facing once you're starting to rip that house apart. Next is permitting. There's a lot of process. Obviously, with Colorado, the question is getting your home permitted or not. But if you want to kind of stay close to the rules and getting everything permitted based off your city and county, it does take some time. That's a lot of delay process. And on top of that, you're going through and getting the designs developed as well as getting them submitted to the city or county to make sure that your permits can get through and done in a timely manner. But depending where it is and what the actual county and government's doing, you could be looking at a few weeks to even a couple months to getting the permitting until you can actually start your project. And then construction delays. There's a lot of delays that are involved with that, unforeseen things that come up. The contractors might not be able to get the job done in the timely manner that you want. Or, they open something up and it creates a whole different project that you have to take on before they can finish that project to move on to the one that you're trying to do. So, that kind of ties in with the unforeseen challenges, but there are a lot of construction delays with materials, and, overall labor through that process. So jumping into the next topic, is the loan types. The loan types you can do with fixer uppers. So the great thing is, the benefits you can get with getting a fixer upper is you can actually roll that into your loan. So depending what loan you're looking to get, you can roll those costs that you want into your loan when you're purchasing the home. Obviously, there's a conventional loan. It's a little bit more out of pocket since you're only getting the loan for the cost of the theme. So it's the challenge is with conventional loans is that you're not going to be able to get that extra money, so you're going to be paying a little bit more. But the benefit too is a construction loan. So a construction loan is another type of loan that's a short-term loan that covers the costs of the building of the new home. You can factor in all the different updates that you're doing and everything, and you could be paying just the interest on that. And the goal with that whole process is, refinancing after you get the updates done, and that's where the ARV comes in. You're able to kind of get the equation and get an understanding of what your home will projected to be once you actually finish your home, and then you can refinance it for a conventional loan and save some money there based off the equity that you're getting from your property. Construction loans, again, are kind of higher interest rates just because they're kind of a quicker loan that you're going through. Next, the FHA loan. This is a little bit more focused for like FHA approved people, but you can get up. One fact right there is you can get up to 96.5% of the purchase price plus renovation costs. So that's really beneficial. So you're not getting that upfront cost that you're going to be having to put down. You can factor all those renovations and updates into that loan. A couple more loans. Fannie Mae home style loan. This is another conventional mortgage that allows you to purchase a fixer upper and pay for the renovations with a single loan. Again, these are all benefits, just not as much is given compared to the FHA one. You can do the DIY work and get the down payment credit. These are all great things that you can do, so you can kind of get that cash to be able to focus on the renovations and updates. So you can get your home done, finished quick, and then you can refi after and then get the equity and turn it in that way. Another VA renovation loan, home equity loan, a HELOC, that's a pretty common one, especially for those individuals that, might not have that much cash, but they currently have a property that has pretty good equity in. A HELOC loan is great to just pull that money out of your current home and put it towards a secondary property to kind of get those fixer-uppers done and completed. And then a refinance loan. You can refinance your current mortgage and pull some cash out that way. Those are a little bit more risky, but they're all different ways of actually being able to take that money that you have maybe locked away in something else to put it towards the renovation of a new property and being able to then refi and get that benefit of the new value of the home. I'm going to stop real quick in the chat. I don't know if anyone had any questions. I'm assuming everyone can hear me still, so that's important. No questions? All right, cool. Let me just jump in and keep going. So this is a good home example. With this photo right here, what I'm showing is a property at 6115 Chase Street in Arvada. This is, kind of what a lot of things that I'm saying you kind of can relate to like a fix and flip. But this is a good example of a fix and flip shifting to an Airbnb. So the property on the left, that's what it looked like. It sold for 505, 522. It's in good shape. There was nothing crazy about it. But it just wasn't updated. It needs some updates. The basement wasn't completed. Kitchen was nice, but it was, again, kind of dated, nothing exciting. Photos on the right are what the flipper did. He flipped that entire home, kind of changed the layout. The kitchen was completely redone, finished out the basement with all new lights, so added extra bedrooms because that basement space wasn't done. And it sold for $799. So you're looking at about a $300,000 increase on the value of the home. This home was sold to one of our clients that actually is it either is or is becoming a short-term rental. So they purchased it. All they had to do was furnish it, design it, give it a couple different looks, and design it to the way they want to actually get it launched, ready to go, which kind of ties into the benefits of turnkey properties. But this is a great example of like what you can do with a home that does need some updates. You can see how amazing it looks. It's completely different from what it looked originally. And if you're able to put the time and effort into designing the home, you can see what kind of the increase in equity your home can actually change. Selling at 505, that's a great deal for this home. And then being able to sell it again for $300,000 more. I talked to the flipper. He spent about $150,000 into it and took about 6 months to do the process. So with that said, that's roughly around 150K of equity and gains that flipper did. And not saying, you want to purchase a home that's a fixer upper and fix and flip, which is, a huge market, but this kind of ties in with the benefit of fixing and keeping into an Airbnb. Not only are you gaining that equity, but where you can, quickly refi, cash out, and do the same thing again, but keep the property and turn it into an Airbnb and start turning a pretty good value, because this home's probably going to do really well depending on the designs and setups, be it based off the size and the updates and the beauty of the home. So yeah, jumping into Turnkey. So Turnkey, as I said earlier, it's pretty much ready to go. It's purchase, design, furnish, launch. And those are some amazing things, especially if you don't have the time to kind of do the fixer-upper process. So some of the benefits, like I said, is time to launch. You're looking at 4 to 6 weeks to get this property going, because all you really need to do, you have no concerns. Obviously, every home, no matter what it is, whether it's a brand new construction or a home that's been updated, obviously there's a couple quirks here and there, but hopefully you're getting those all figured out in the due diligence process of being under contract. But that time to launch time is really just 4 to 6 weeks, being able to get your property listed as an Airbnb, because all you're really dealing with is that shipping time of the furniture that you ordered, as well as the design, just getting everything set up. A lot of people can do it even quicker, but overall, the benefit with turnkey property is it's good to go, ready to be launched. Right down to the second line, there's no need for major renovation costs. With these turnkey properties, whether they are updated like a flipper or it is a new build, everything's new. Everything's ready to go. Most flipped homes are going to be updated unless you're dealing with a challenging flipper that might not have done a great job. But, again, that's with the due diligence. But a lot of the big change updates that are coming in with a flipped home or an updated home are the major appliances. You're looking at roof, sewer, HVAC, plumbing. These are all things that are like very important and big ticket items that usually are taken care of with an updated home. Again, with the less issues, everything is updated and there's not going to be a lot of things that you're going to be dealing with. There's small things here and there, but those big ticket items really aren't going to be something that you're going to have to worry about and update. Resale demand. The resale demand of this home, it's going to be selling at top dollar because it's updated. There's nothing that you're really going to be facing if you do decide to resell your home. It's going to be fully ready to go. A lot of people are wanting these homes that are fully updated and turnkey. So once you get all those updates and everything's completed, being able to sell your home is going to be a lot more demand. A lot of people are going to want that property. Loan options, it is a benefit. It's going to be a little bit easier to get a loan buying a turnkey property. You can do just simple conventional loan, second home loan, HELOC, first time home buyer, FHA, VA. They're very straightforward processes in getting these loans compared to a construction loan where you do need to provide a lot more information on like the overall work that's needing to be done, what the updates are, again, with that ARV, figuring out what that value is going to be after that renovation. With a turnkey property, it's pretty straightforward. The home's updated, able to get the loan that's necessary, and then move forward. Some of the turnkey negatives, just right off the bat, you're looking at that price of purchase. That home, since it's updated, the ARV is already factored into the selling of that home. So you're going to be paying the top dollar on that home compared to a fixer-upper where you can probably get a deal. Fixer-uppers, since there are a lot of issues, not really issues, but updates that aren't done yet, you're able to kind of negotiate that price a little bit better. Then most likely those homes will be sitting on the market longer. With a turnkey property, it's going to be a high demand. They're designing that home to sell quick and sell for the most value, the highest cost possible for that seller. They're designing it at the market value of everything. So, facing a lot of challenges, especially with the market now where things are picking up, you can possibly be at risk of getting in a bid war, selling a little or buying a little bit higher price than what you kind of wanted because other people are trying to purchase that home. Next is the equity. Compared to a fixer-upper, where you're getting a lot more equity after fixing up the home, the turnkey property is already updated. You're only looking at that 1 to 3% per year in equity, which is the standard for around Colorado. There's not going to be much growth going on with a turnkey property because everything's updated. A lot of the ARV's already been pulled out of that home. It's pretty much maxed out on the designs and setups. Obviously, if you put a little bit more in, the backyard, different areas where it could update it, yeah, you can get a little bit more equity that way. But purchasing a turnkey property, it's pretty much maxed out on that equity because the design was done and the updates were done prior. And then, yeah, competition. You're purchasing an updated home. Buying an updated home, you're competing with a lot of traditional buyers compared to those ones that are looking to change this home into an Airbnb. You're dealing with, 99% of the other clientele out there that are buying and looking for a home that they don't have to worry about. They can move in right away, not have any issues that they have anything to deal with. So you're dealing with a higher amount of people in that market. So there's a lot more competition, and that's where those bid wars come in. People willing to pay that extra top dollar to get into a home that is ready to go. So what I wanted to do, this is kind of wrapping up the end of the presentation. I wanted to show a couple off-market homes for sale. These are things that we have here at Good Neighbor that we provide. We have a lot of clients that might have done updates to their homes, or they're just kind of getting out of the short-term rental game. So these are a few that I wanted to show. There's one right here in Arvada. It's listed at $795. This home was completely redesigned and set up to be a short-term rental. Professional designers came in and designed the whole home. It's got it's like a 70s theme. It's called the Harmony House. Pool table downstairs, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. I think it sleeps about 13 people. And this is a great example of a turnkey, so to speak, Airbnb that you could purchase. There's a couple updates that you could do to it. Maybe add, a putting green in the backyard. The garage isn't completed. You could, hold on. This looks like we got a chat. Yeah, Rob asked a question. What makes Arvada a good Airbnb candidate? So there's a few factors into that. One is the fact that it's short-term rental friendly. So Arvada is very short-term rental friendly. All you do is required to get a license and you're good to go. The challenges, of course, is the fact that it's so friendly and there's no cap. So there's a bit of a saturation. So you do have to stand out with some of your amenities and overall design of your home to kind of stand out from the rest of them out there. But the fact that Arvada is a short-term rental friendly area makes it really appealing to a lot of people of setting it up. On the contrary, Denver County only allows primary residence short-term rentals. So you have to do either a house hacking where you live in the property and rent out part of it, or you aren't able to just do a non-primary property. Arvada is all non-primary properties for Airbnb. So that's why you can kind of see a lot of properties out there to book for Airbnb. Yeah, kind of jumping into the second one. So this is another one in Arvada. Seems like a lot are in Arvada, but like I said right there with Arvada, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, these are all short-term rental friendly areas. But there are a good amount in Arvada, and these are all clients of ours that are just deciding to move on. This one's listed at $630, fully furnished. This is a good example of I would say a medium renovation fixer-upper short-term rental. Main reason is it's not designed to the level of like the house next to it, the Harmony House. It wasn't professionally designed. The backyard is pretty much just basic grass back there. There's nothing really been put into it to really make it stand out. There's some of the space could be updated a little bit more. There's a nice little kitchenette down in the basement. But what's being involved is really putting a little bit extra money into this home to getting it set up and designed to be the best way possible. Benefit, it is updated, so there's not like, I don't think you need to be updating the kitchens, things like that, but one of the bathrooms could be updated a little bit. And just the space designed and put in. So there's a little bit more money, I'd think, that'd be involved with this one. And then the Arvada Airbnb listing for 725. This is a great example of another turnkey capability. They installed a pickleball court in the backyard. There's not really much left you need to do to the property. Maybe update a couple designs and everything. But other than that, these are all great, almost turnkey properties. So that's kind of where, makes the decision of, jumping into an off-market property that's already good to go or taking on those fixer-uppers. I think personally, fixer-uppers are the most beneficial through the process. One, like I said, with some of the benefits is the updates, being able to kind of control in the design of what you want to do, and really getting that equity from finishing everything. You can really see the benefit that you're getting from that. But that's, again, a lot of time, a lot of effort. If you ask my wife, she'll say she'd prefer a turnkey just because of the amount of months that we've been dealing with construction zones. But I personally think a fixer-upper or a home that needs those updates and changes are going to be a lot more beneficial in the long term, of overall equity and return on what your property is going to get, both as a short-term rental and if you plan on reselling down the road. So real quick, these are kind of a little background information. Us at Good Neighbor Realty, what our main goal is really just to help you find an investment property, whether it's turnkey, whether it's a fixer-upper, whether you're looking for midterm, long-term. Obviously, our focus is short-term rental, but we're able to help in any way on the idea of buying an investment property here in Colorado. And these are some of the resources that we have. We host events pretty much 3 to 4 times, in-person events 3 to 4 times a month. And then we do have these webinars on different topics. Our short-term rental pro course, that's a great course that we've developed over the past few months of pretty much every topic that you could think of in regards to investing as a short-term rental or investing in general. We're able to go over a lot of that information on these videos that we provide. So we have a whole course if that's something of interest. Investment property underwriting, we go through a full breakdown of the property that you might be interested in looking at, whether it's, building out a pro forma or getting an understanding of the overall layout of the home, whether updates are needed, or if it's, ready to go and turnkey. We can really break down of what those overall returns, what you can get through pro formas and overall, upfront costs that you're looking at. We can really give you a good understanding of what it's going to take to make that home, one, successful, and two, going to be a great investment. We develop overall seller's guides. So all our clients, if we are selling their home, as an example, those off-market properties, a lot of those properties, we sold them and they just decided to move on and sell. But we actually go through the whole process with the seller's guide on developing your home, making sure it's marketed correctly to being able to sell it and get your top dollar for. We also have a podcast available. So I haven't been on it yet, but I don't know if I want to, but should be fun. But either way, that we bring in a lot of investment focused people that actually, depending what range of the investment they're going on, whether it's multifamily, short-term rental, long-term, midterm, we get a lot of people coming on that provide a lot of information on that podcast. And then of course, buyer's guide, just the other side of it, helping you through the whole process of buying that property. And these all kind of go hand in hand and giving you all that information on knowing the different areas that you're looking at, what are going to be successful areas, whether it's a mountain property or Denver metro area. We can kind of show you what you're seeing and projecting to get on your revenue. This is, again, just kind of taking on the course. If you do want to purchase our course, it's if you use the code MAX for 50% off on the course. It's a good 5-6 hours of different information that you can see depending on what topic you're looking for. We pretty much cover mostly all topics when it comes to in regards to investing or investing in short-term rental. Again, this is that podcast. I don't know if you guys wanted to scan anything in regards to getting that link to our podcast and the different topics that we kind of go over. And these are some of our socials. So if you are interested in following us or, chatting with us or anything like that, you're more than welcome to. Finally, this is my contact information. My name again is Max Paris. Some of my focuses, like I said, are kind of focusing on those fixer-uppers, kind of taking on projects, whether it's small projects or large projects. I'm pretty good on finding the right contacts for you, whether it's contractors or seeing if it's something that you want to take on personally. I have pretty good personal experience on building and updating homes myself. So I'm definitely here as a resource in any way possible to kind of give you more information. Or if you're looking the route of a turnkey property, we have a pretty vast understanding of those properties that are going to be successful and the information necessary to be a successful investment property or a short-term rental, whether it's midterm, long-term, anything like that. But yeah, that's all my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm available, happy to give more information, a little bit more detail, kind of go over a little bit more in detail of what I kind of talked about today. I know it's a little bit different with the webinar game since I'm kind of just talking to a screen. So, if you're interested in learning a little bit more and having a more in-depth conversation, I'm more than happy to chat with you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw it up in the chat or anything. And I hope you guys enjoyed what I kind of went over. And yeah, thank you for joining. I'll stay on here a couple of minutes if you guys want. Throw out any questions or anything like that. But if not, feel free to jump off. I mean, Rob, that's a good question. I mean, that wouldn't be, I don't think that's directly towards Arvada. No. Arvada is just because it's so friendly. And again, back with like Denver County, for example, it's very hard to actually find a whole home as a rental property if you're visiting. Of course, Colorado in general, the reason why it's such a successful short-term rental location is because, yeah, it's one of the top visited locations in Colorado. You have a couple features dealing with that. One, you have the mountains. It's only an hour and a half if you're not dying in traffic, of course, up to the mountain ranges of the most well-known Rockies, obviously with Breckenridge, Vail, all these different areas. It's one road up there. And then you have Denver. Denver's right there. Arvada, can range from 10 to 15-minute drive just into Denver. But the biggest thing is it kind of sits in the middle. If you look at a map of different areas that are short-term rental friendly, Arvada is actually pretty highly rated as a location to get an Airbnb just because it sits, northwest. It's really close to 70 where you can blast up into the mountains. You have Golden, you're close to kind of in the middle of Denver and Boulder. So you have it's a great location of what it is and the fact that it's short-term rental friendly. You can't really stay unless somebody's doing it possibly illegally or they have some kind of hotel style zoning in Denver County. Most of the properties are going to be a house hack where somebody's actually living in that property. In Denver with Arvada, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, they're all non-primary locations that you can get a whole house rental. And the location, just off statistics, the fact that it's in that northwest area, close to 70, being able to go up the 70 up on to the mountain range is then straight down to Denver, and you have Boulder right there. It's just really the location that makes it popular. But no, not all the time. Like my property in Wheat Ridge, a lot of the guests messaged me saying that one, getting a place, they drive up to the mountains to go snowboarding, but it costs $1,000 a night to stay in Breckenridge. My place is a couple $100 a night, and they can go to Denver at night, hang out, and go out to have a good time and eat, and then in the morning blast up to go up to the mountains. Yeah, absolutely. Robin, again, I can chat a little bit more about it if you want. Feel free to give me a shout or something like that. I can go in a little bit detail about all the different areas that are one successful, including Arvada, um, that have short-term rental potential. I haven't specifically worked with commercial property fix-ups, Maria. The the commercial properties that I have in California were kind of thrown into my situation with me and my sister. We were able to get a small percentage in it. So I could say I have some contacts that kind of deal with that, but we're more focused on the residential side. It's obviously a goal of mine to get into more of the commercial side since I have an understanding of it in the California area. But it is a definitely a different animal because there's a lot more codes and permitting that's involved compared to residential, where you can probably get by with a few things. The commercial side does have a lot more red tape, I'd say, that's involved with those property fix-ups, just because of the insurances and the overall liabilities that are involved with commercial. Yeah, well, great. Again, thank you so much for your guys' time. I will end the meeting, and yeah, again, hope to speak with you again. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'm happy to answer more.